we have travelled further north than I have ever travelled before in search of a carp, and that is the aim for me: catch myself my first ever northern carp. Our guest from this session film has a slightly different target in mind, and that is to catch his 400th English 30-pounder.
This is a place I've wanted to fish since the 90s. This is a piece of paradise.
I see a fish throw really tight to the tree line, and I just thought, fuck it, I'm just going to put the rod out there. And that is why you react to what you see when you're carp fishing.
This way. This has turned into a little bit of a story for me. He sat right on the spot. Flicked around the corner, it's only been out there an hour. He's on, but he's got stuck. Nope.
If there is one thing I love about a session film, it is the variety. Not just the venues, but the anglers that I get to fish with as well. And for this session film, we have travelled further north than I have ever travelled before in search of a carp. And that is the aim for me: catch myself my first ever northern carp. Our guest from this session film has a slightly different target in mind, and that is to catch his 400th English 30-pounder. And yes, you heard me right, I did say 400. I'm not going to tell you who it is, you'll find out shortly, but the one clue I will give you is he has caught most of those carp fishing weekends. To my right here is the beautiful, beautiful Birch Grove, a place that is absolutely steeped in history. It's got fish of all varieties in here, both new and old. I cannot wait to get stuck into this place, and neither can our guest. So without further ado, that's what we're going to do.
So here we are. This is a place I've wanted to fish since the 90s, and yeah, Topography have pulled this one out of the bag. This is a piece of paradise, and yeah, I've got one more 30 to go now till my 400th English 30, and what a place this would be. This is the furthest I've ever fished north, and yeah, it took me four and a half hours to get here from little old New Forest, but well worth getting up this morning for this. This is just stunning, and yeah, it's paradise. I don't think I've ever fished a place as nice as this. You know, especially, you know, fishing off the boards. I've never done that before. It's all new to me. So I've got them locked up, they're all screwed down. I couldn't help it. I was waiting while they were doing the intro. I could hear them talking, and I thought, big old Richie will be a little while now. And they were fizzing like hell out there, like, you know. So I've still got some rigs left on from when I come back from Devon last week, and so I just whacked on a couple of little mesh bags, and I've just put them directly out where I've seen them fizzing, like, you know. And whilst I was waiting for Rich to come down, I've put some pellet out there, floater pellet, and there's backs out the water as well. So I've got a feeling we're going to get some off the bottom and some off the top. Fingers crossed.
There is so many carp out there. Been watching them now for quite a while, to be honest. Stood round in Steve's swim. I don't know if I mentioned this on camera earlier, but I really don't like to be the guy who turns up next to someone who's got fish taken on the surface and starts fishing for them, because in my opinion that's one of the worst things you can do. However, I did come armed with floaters for a reason. This is the reason. The fish are going mad. There is loads out here. In fact, it looks like there's a lot more out here than there is in front of Steve. Probably because he's fishing for them, you know, the drift's coming through here, you know, and they're reacting to that. So I can't give it much longer before I get my rods in the water and have a go for them off the surface, because, you know, there's a golden opportunity out there, as there is next door as well. And I think, you know, we've come here to catch a carp. Until we've caught one, you know, the pressure is on. So while there is opportunities like this, I should probably make the most of it, I think. I'll put one pouch full of my own mixers out though, for sure, just to feel a little bit better about the situation, I think. Like it couldn't be any more where they were taking them. There's a few there now. Go on, mate. Have that. It's just beyond me still, just a tiny bit far. Come on.
Well, the floater fishing, it can be frustrating, you know. It's a little early in the daytime. Some lakes respond, you know. I found most of them respond to either early morning floater fishing or the last knockings, you know, a bit like normal fishing. But you know, sometimes in the daytime it can be frustrating. But I've had bonus fish, so many bonus fish. I've had them up to 45 this year off the top. You know, they'll have floaters all the way through the year, but sometimes, you know, this is a brand new lake. I don't know, you know, I didn't know whether they take floaters, but they do. They're having them, you know, and I don't think probably many of the people that come here probably don't probably use the floaters, and you know, so I'm confident we'll get one. I've got a big sort of, the hook bait's too big. I've definitely had an aborted take, and I'm going to stick on the little 12mm krill in a minute and get them going again. You know, they've sort of stopped. You know, they've had a little fill. There's not that many of them taking. I think half of them don't know what it is. I can see them 2 foot under the surface. There's plenty of carp in here, but you know, there's probably only 10% of the carp that are taking the floaters. So I think by the end of the 48 hours, they're definitely going to. You know, try and get a couple off the top. You know, I think this evening, that's my little prediction. I think about 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, I reckon I'll have one by then. You know, so touch wood as we're on the boards, and you know, never know, it could happen now. You know, I've had one that I take, and I'm going to give it 2 more minutes, and then I'm changing that hook bait.
Having watched Steve floater fishing in his swim for quite a long period of time, there was one thing that became quite obvious, not just to Steve, but also to me, and that was the fact that the fish weren't too keen on the casting. So every time he put the rod out, the fish would drift off. And the one disadvantage to having a controller float setup, although it can be great for casting at fish, sometimes that can work against you, and it did seem that maybe a different approach would be worth trying. So something I have used in the past is the adjustable zig method, popped all the way up to the surface, with the hook link, you know, out to the side of the float. And the main reason for the whole thing is because of the wind. I don't want to keep recasting because of that drift which you get with a controller float. There is a breeze, at times the wind does drop and it's not too much of a problem, but there's an inherent surface tow. Fish are feeding at 50 or 60 yards, your float is always going to drift unless you've got the perfect wind off your back, and even then, the float will still have the ability to swing round. If you can anchor it in position, your float stays out there. The idea is to get the fish feeding in as close to your float as possible, of course, but in this situation, I didn't want to have to keep recasting. So I put the float out there in position, it stays there, and hopefully that gives the fish confidence to come in and feed around it. Gets to that stage when you're floating fishing sometimes and you're literally fishing for the dregs, and it's been like that for a while. There has been fish come through in groups here and there, very short-lived opportunities, and you can sit here all day doing this, and I don't want to do that. So I'm going to move up the other end and get some rods out on the bottom for the night. Maybe have a go floater fishing again tomorrow, but for now, I want to get some rods sorted for this evening and tomorrow morning.
So what's transpired is Elliott was going to go in. There's only 3 swims on this lake, but these fish they're bob on. They know exactly what's what, and I started messing about in this swim, putting out floaters and all that, and then they moved out into the middle. And then Elliott moved down into the middle and they started moving back up, and then they moved the other end. And so what Elliott's decided to do, which is quite, I think that's quite a good move to be fair, he's gone in the 3rd swim, so we've left the middle free. So I think that middle part could be a key to, you know, some night catches or some early morning catches, and they're definitely taking the floaters more in the middle area. So if Elliott's down the end, I'm down the other end, we've got the middle part, we can, if we see them boshing and whatever, we can wang a lead out into the middles, like, you know.
I've fished a few lakes, to be fair, over the years that are just silk, and you can spend a long time leading around finding cleaner areas and all that, but the one thing I have found on those lakes, you're always better off just watching where the carp actually feed. Like, you can lead around for fucking ages. You can lead around for ages. and you find an area that you think, oh, that feels lovely, but it doesn't mean they want to eat there. It's not like when you've got gravel spots, fish are often cleaning those areas, or they're keeping them clean. With the silt, yes, they will clean the areas, but I don't believe they do it in the same way. And just because it feels good with a lead, don't mean it's a good area. You're always better off just watching, you know, and seeing what the carp do, letting them tell you where to fish. So although I'm having a lead around now, you know, that's more just for peace of mind than anything else. It doesn't mean that, you know, because the silt feels thick, because the silt feels thick, you're not going to catch out of it, or because it feels super smooth, you are going to. I don't think it works like that. And quite often, those really silty venues are quite, the areas change quite a lot throughout the year, I find. You know, what is a good spot on a lake for the gravel spots, it's not always like that on a silty lake like this. So I'm just going to have a lead around, just so I know that I'm presented when I do put the rods out there, and tomorrow morning, that'll be the real test. You know, where are the fish, where are they feeding, and you know, that'll tell me where I really need to be. But I know they were out there this morning. You know, the camera guys got here this morning, they said they've seen them in that area. Good place to start.
Cleanish. Maybe a little leaf in it. Let's have one more go. Well, I think it's it looks more likely than that sort of right-hand spot. That looks like a daytime spot to me. And you know, there's that big sort of snaggy bush. I think they'll work their way through those lilies tonight. And that's about, you know, it's about sort of, it's about 6 to 8 foot away from the lilies. I could risk it, but I don't want to. I don't want to put fish in any danger or whatever. You know, night time, get a run at 2 o'clock in the morning. It's in the bloody lilies before I know it. So I've done it a little way off. I'm gonna scatter baits all the way along, throw and stick 20 millers, and all the way along the pads, and concentrate some in that hole, and hopefully that'll do the trick on that spot. So I'll just wrap that up, see how far it is, and then we've got a measurement in case I get one in the night. Let's get this one a little bit further where those duckies are. I know this is a silty mere, and to be fair, I think it must have been desilted at some point because it's not that bad. It's thick, over 3/4 over, and then there's a big clear area, you know, which I think's, you know, a feeding area. I think it's centre of the lake probably, and they're you know, I've just pulled through it. It's gone stiff again, like, you know, sort of sticky, not stiff, but sticky. And so I'm just using the main rods. I normally would use a leading rod because you get it dead accurate, like, you know, but because I know what I'm just looking for that smooth, you know, it comes across like glass, and you know that's probably been a bloodworm bed, a favourite feedy hole for them, or maybe that's where lots of people have put lots of bait, I don't know, and it's cleared it. So, but you know, those are the types of things I tend to look for. See, that dropped down nice, and that pulls through really clear. So that could be potentially a spot. So we've got that one there at 14.5. I'm just going to see whether it's the same down to the left a bit. That sticky. A little smooth spot there, but not enough. As I'm doing this, that little dolly hole I said was the the daytime one. There's 2 carp just beating the pads there. Tricky one. I don't want all my rods centred around the pads, like, you know. It's just not the one, especially seeing most of the fish today have been in the sort of open water, like, you know. So it might be just 2 on the pads and 1 in the open, I think.